Again today the Gemara on Daf Mem Tes Amud Aleph, 4 lines down from the top of the Yamud, where it says Gufa. So the Gemara here brings back a statement that it brought before regarding a shtar that was signed by Eidim. It's a valid shtar, but now these Eidim are adding other information about the shtar, coming and telling us that the shtar is actually not kosher, even though it's signed by them. So Gufa, here's the statement itself that was mentioned before. Amar Rav Nachman said, Amana hayud varenu ein amanen. Eidim that signed the shtar, and then they come and say, well, we signed it, but all the information in the shtar is not true. Why? Because it was just written as a trust. For example, if it says in the shtar that Reuven borrowed $1,000 from Shimon, Reuven never borrowed the money, it was just written as information that if he'll borrow the money, then this document will be used. But it never happened. So Rav Nachman says, Eidim are not believed to say this. And the reason is, Rashbam explains, we learned yesterday also, that number one, there's a klal of kivin shehigid shuv en achayzer magid. Once you have testimony in a signed document, it's like those Eidim that signed that document were in the Bezdin and testified for this. You can't give testimony and then retract and come and change it. So the signatures is telling us that the information of the shtar that's written happened. Now they can't change that. And there's another point that Eino de Mesim Atzmei Rasha. To sign such a document, you're not allowed, because this is something that will then be used, even though he never borrowed the money. So to say about themselves that we signed it, even though we're not allowed, then they're making themselves a Rasha. They're not believed to say such a thing about themselves. Another case, if they come and say that this shtar, that we signed, but there's a midah on this, ein amanim. Midah means that there was a notification in advance. This is a shtar that was signed for a sale, that a person is selling a property. They say, yeah, we signed it, but we got a notification in advance from the seller that this entire sale that's going to happen and the document that you will sign is all null and void. I'm not interested in selling. So also, they're not believed. Again, according to Rav Nachman, for the same reason, because kivin shehigid shuv ein achayzer magid. Once you sign the document, you can't come and then tell us a story about what's written here, different than the testimony that's signed in this document. Mar bar Avashi Amar, however, Mar bar Avashi disagrees. Mar bar Avashi says, Amana hayud varenu ein amanim. If they come and say about this signed document that the information is incorrect because it was only written as a trust, that's taka true, like Rav Nachman said, they're not believed to say that, because they're uprooting the entire content of the shtar. You can't have a signed document and then retract and come and say that it's not true. However, if the Eidim that signed this document come and say that there was a notification on this shtar in advance that the shtar should not be in effect at all, then for that namanim, for that they are believed. My time, what's the reason for this distinction? Shezeh nitin likosef, because the shtar that you're signing when there was a midah in advance, that's something that you're allowed to sign. The person that's signing a shtar, he's being forced to make a sale and he's not interested, he's under pressure, so he writes the shtar and the Eidim sign it, and there's a midah in advance to let know that I don't really want this sale at all. That's something that's allowed to be written. So when the Eidim now come and say that we signed the shtar, but there was a notification in advance, they're not making themselves into a rasha, so they're believed to say that. However, v'zeh loy nitin likosev, a shtar that's being written just as an amana, just as a trust, but the story that's written in the shtar never happened yet, that's a shtar that you're not allowed to write. So if they come and say that we signed it, and then they come and say, but what's written here never happened, that we don't believe them, because Eidim are not believed to make themselves into a rasha.
But if the notification was done before the shtar, so what's the sense for them to sign the shtar?
Because there's a person is pressured to sign the shtar, and he's being forced to make the sale, so he has no choice. So the shtar is being written, but there's a notification in advance. Another point here to explain what the Gemara says, the Rashbam explains that there's a problem of kivin shehigid shuv ein achayzer magid, that once you sign a shtar and we see it and there's testimony here, how could you come and say now that there was a midah, that there was a notification in advance and this whole shtar is bottled? You're basically uprooting your edus. So the Rashbam says this is not considered to be uprooting edus. And he brings an example. The Gemara says in Ksubis, let's say a person signs a shtar and he comes and tells the bezin, I signed a shtar, or we signed a shtar, and it's a true shtar, but there was a condition regarding what's written in the shtar that's not explicit in the words of the shtar, but there was a condition. And therefore that condition wasn't met yet, so therefore the words of the shtar don't take effect yet. they're going to be believed to say that. They're not uprooting the shtar in that case. That's not considered to be chayzer or magid, that you're coming and uprooting and saying that what happened in the shtar, what's written in the shtar, that is, never happened. All you're saying is that there's an additional condition to this, that you'll be believed. Similar, Mar Baravashi holds regarding a meidah, you're not saying that what's written in the shtar here didn't happen. There was a sale, the person was pressured to make the sale, and everything that's written in the shtar happened. Elamai, there was a meidah. There's something else that happened in advance that will end up uprooting what says in the shtar. So in such a case, they are believed to say this. As opposed to Amana, you're uprooting the whole thing. You're saying it never happened. What's written in the shtar was written as a trust, that it never happened. That's uprooting a testimony in the words of the shtar, and even Mar Baravashi agrees that they're not believed to say that. Going back to the halacha of chazakeh that was mentioned in the Mishnah, v'loi leish chazakeh b'nichsei ishte v'cholo. A man, a husband, does not have the possibility to establish a chazakeh in the properties of his wife. This is the nichsei malug, the properties that the husband has the rights to eat from the peiros, but the property itself belongs to his wife. If the husband was there for 3 years and his wife was quiet about this, that doesn't prove any status of ownership that he bought this property from his wife. So the Gemara asks on this halacha, pshita. It's very obvious that he can't establish a chazakeh. Kiven the islay lepeida, since the husband has the rights to eat all produce from this property, so the fact that he's there 3 years and using and eating all the fruits, peidu the kachol. He's expressing his right to eat the fruits of the property. Why would I think that this proves any kind of chazakeh, that he bought the property itself, the goof of the property from his wife? And says the Gemara, loy tzriche, the case of the Mishnah is only needed in the following case. The Kosav law that he writes to his wife regarding this nichsei maluk property, din udvarim emli b'nechasayach. I have no rights, no legal rights regarding your possessions, and therefore he didn't have any rights to eat from the peiros. And now, if he's there for 3 years eating from the peiros, so that you would think could be a proof that he bought it from her. And that's the chiddush of the Mishnah, that even in this case, it's no proof that he bought it from her. If he writes to his wife this kind of expression, that I have no legal rights to your property, how does that help? We learned in the Braise, a person says to his friend, person is a partner in a property, and he writes to his partner, I have no legal rights in this property, I'm not involved with this, my hand is removed from here, but he said, has no effect at all, because it just sounds like a wish that I want to be out of this, I don't want to have anything to do with this, but he's not actually making a kinyan. There's nothing actually that's happening here that's legally disconnecting him from this property that he's a partner in. So here as well, the rights that the husband has, just by telling his wife, I'm not involved, I have no legal rights, it doesn't change the fact. So the Gemara answers, Amrullah de Rabbi Yanai. So by Rabbi Yanai they explain, Mas Nisan, what our Mishnah is talking about is the kais of la avodah arusa, that the husband wrote to his wife when she was still after the first stage of marriage, after the Kiddushin, before the full marriage of Nisuin, so in advance. He's writing to her that I'm not going to have any I'm giving up any of my legal rights to have in the properties of Nichsei Milug that a husband usually has, to eat the peiros. You only get those rights after the Nisuin, after the second stage of marriage. So he's writing to her in advance that I'm not going to take any of those rights. Rav Kahana, as Rav Kahana said, Rav Kahana says, Nachla habal an inheritance that a person gets from a different place, not the regular nachla that a person inherits from his father, but a nachla that a person gets from a different place. What this is talking about is something that Chachamim instituted that a person should be inheriting. So then, ma'ada masne aleha, a person can make a condition and say, Shelo Yirushana, that he's not interested in inheriting this. Right, so when it comes to something that Chachamim instituted for a person, for his benefit, like the case that we're talking about over here, for the husband's benefit, Chachamim instituted that he has the rights to eat and to use the peiros of his wife's property. And the husband comes and says in advance, I don't want to get these peiros. I'm not interested in having any connection to them. So then, with that statement itself, he has the ability to prevent it, to stop from getting that Chachamim instituted for his sake. So Taisus over here explains that this is the chiddush over here is that usually, just like there's a halacha that ein adam makne davish lebal olam, you can't sell something that it's not in the world yet or that you don't own yet. So seemingly, you would say the same thing. You can't remove yourself or say that I'm not going to get something before you even have any connection to it. When you inherit it, then you get it. Then you could decide to sell it. But in advance, to decide that you don't want it, you would think you don't have the power to do that. But over here, regarding a takanas chachamim instituted for your benefit that you should get this paytas from your wife when you marry her, you have the ability to say that I'm not interested in this takanas chachamim in advance, and then you don't inherit this.
Or does it have to be in advance?
After the fact, you could sell it off. It's true, the Gemara over here could have simply said that the husband, gave it away. But the Gemara here is using this term of din advarim. It's a bigger chiddush regarding this case of din advarim. The Gemara could have just simply said that he gave it away. But if he's using this term of din advarim ainly, this term only works if he would say it in advance. We find also similar that Rava said, Rava said, anybody that comes and says, I'm not interested in what Chachamim instituted. I don't want to take the benefits of what Chachamim instituted for my sake. Kagoin Zais, like this example, Shaimeloi. We listen to him, we follow what he says. Now, what is this example? My Kagoin Zais. What was it that Rava was saying, Kagoin Zais, that he can say, I'm not interested in what Chachamim instituted? Rav Huna Amarav said this halacha. A woman can say to the husband, Eini nizainis ve'eini yaiseh. I'm not interested in you providing me with food, and I'm not going to be working, and you should take all the income of my work. The way Chachamim instituted is that the husband feeds the wife, and then in exchange, if she works, the husband gets all of the income of her work. But if she says to herself, Chachamim made this takana for my benefit, so that if my income is not enough, I should have a source of food that I'm going to be guaranteed. My husband has to support me, has to feed me. But if she says, I'm rich enough, I can support myself, I'm not interested in this takana. So because Chachamim made the takana for her benefit, she can say that I don't need your food. Any nizainis, I'm not taking any food from you. And then what happens? All of her income she keeps for herself. So just like there you see that it's for her benefit that Chachamim has made it for this takana for her, that she can decide that she doesn't want it. It's the same thing over here. That Chachamim said that the husband gets the nichsei malug, and in exchange, the Chachamim, the takana was that a husband has the responsibility to take care of his wife, and that is per koina, meaning if she got captured, the husband has the obligation to save her from that situation. But the husband can say, I'm not interested in this. I don't want the nichsei malug. According to the Rashbam, the husband could even come and say, I'm not going to take your nichsei malug. I'm not going to use the paytas from your property, and I'm not going to have the obligation to redeem you if you're in a place of captivity. According to Taisvis, that obligation a husband cannot reject, because that's not for his benefit. You could only reject the takanas chachamim that they made for your benefit. But what they made for her benefit, that you have to redeem her if she's in captivity, that you're obligated. But you could decide that I don't want to take in return the paytas that I would get from her property. Okay, so that's the case that we're talking about over here, that the husband does not have any of the rights to eat the paytas of her property. And now, what happened? He came and used the property for 3 years, and the Mishnah is coming to say that he has no chazakah. So over here, there's a chiddush in this, because he's eating the paytas, even though he had really no rights to the paytas. He gave it up already. So why is he eating paytas? It looks like the wife decided to sell him his property. Nevertheless, the Mishnah says that there's no chazakah here, because the wife still would be quiet and would be meichel to the husband that's eating the paytas from her property, even though he gave up that right. But she would still be quiet, and the fact that she wasn't meichel for 3 years doesn't prove that he bought it from her. Okay, the Gemara continues. What do we see from the Mishnah? Ha raya yesh. The Mishnah said the very fact that the husband was there eating the paytas for 3 years does not prove that he bought it from her. But a raya, how about if the husband brings proof that my wife sold me this property? So then that would be a good raya that he actually bought it from her. But the question is, why? Taime, we should say, nachas ruach, or she could say that nachas ruach asisi labaili. The fact that I wrote to my husband, that I sold it to him, I only did it because I didn't want to have any fights with him. I wanted him to be happy. So therefore I said, I'm selling you my property. But I didn't really seriously agree to sell it to him. And where do we see this concept? Milet nan, didn't we learn in the Mishnah the following halacha? Lokach mineish. A person bought a property that's owned by a man. And now this property that this man owns and he's married, the halacha is all the properties that a person owns have a certain shibud in it to the ksubah. to the ksuba of the wife. If he passes away, or if he divorces her, and she has to collect her ksuba money, where does that come from? There's a shibud, there's a lien on all the properties that this man owns. So now if someone comes and buys a property from a man, and now you want to make sure that the wife won't later come to collect from there her ksuba in the chance that she gets divorced or she becomes an almana. So he goes and pays her also something that she shouldn't be able to have any shibud now in this karka. Mekhay bottle. The sale is null and void. Now, the Rashbam here just clarifies when it says in the Gemara that the mekach is bottle, it doesn't mean that it's entirely bottle. This is the Rashbam's shitta. Until the time when the wife would have to come and collect from here her ksubah, that sale could be in effect. But when and if the time comes that she wants to collect her ksubah from this property that was sold, and she also agreed to sell, but it doesn't take effect, because the fact that she signed off on this sale and she was ready to get paid off in order that the sale of this karka should be in effect. Why did she do this? Because she didn't want to get into a fight with her husband. Her husband's doing business. Her husband is selling a property, and if she's going to interfere in his business, and people are not going to want to buy from him because they know that in the future the wife may come and take it away, he can't do business. So she only did it for the nachas ruach of the husband. As the Gemara explains, Alma, what we see from here, that Omra, she can say nachas ruach asisi labayli. As long as my husband was alive, or as long as I was married to him, so of course I signed off on the sale of the property that my husband sold. I didn't want to interfere with his business. So if so, fragt the Gemara, hachanami, here as well, teime nachas ruach asisi labayli. If a husband comes forward with proof that his wife sold him this property, why can't you come and say the same thing? That the fact that he has proof that she sold it is meaningless. I just did it because I wanted him to be happy. So I said, I'll sell this to you. But really, it's no real sale at all. So the Gemara answers, ha'itmar Allah, but we learned on that Mishnah that we just quoted, that a wife's consent to a sale is meaningless. So we learned about that Omer Rabba Bava Basra said that we don't always apply that. When was that said? Ella only ba'oisan gimel sadais. There are 3 properties that we say that when a wife signs off on a sale of a husband, that it's not to be taken seriously. And she can later say that I only did it to make my husband feel good. What are the 3 properties? Achas shakosav lo b'ksubasa. One is a property that's explicitly written in the ksubah that this is the property that you can collect your ksubah from. So over here, this property, if she comes and writes that I'm selling it and I'm ready to sell it, we don't take that seriously. This because she really wants to have that property as the property that's a shibud, there's a lien for her to be able to collect her ksubah from it. V'achas, and there's another property, sheyichad lo b'ksubasa, that after they got married, even if it wasn't written explicitly into the ksubah, but after they got married, the husband designated a specific property, that it's this property, Rashi says, Rashbam, that it says, apaitiki, when he designates one property and says, this is the property you can collect your ksubah from. So over here, if she says, then she signed off on the sale, she agreed to the sale, it's worthless. And v'achas, a third property, she brings into the marriage a property that she got from her parents. And this property, what it's called usually is a nichsei tzayin barzal. It's brought into the marriage. It's not written in the ksubah, but this is a property that it has a certain value when she got married. And if she gets divorced or her husband dies, she gets back that property for the value as is when she got married. So because this is a property that she always gets back after the husband dies or after she's divorced, she gets back that property as is. If the husband sells it while she's married to him, the sale is null and void, even if she's agreeing to the sale. Those are these 3 properties that Rabbi Baravona says. That's what this Mishnah is talking about when it says that when she signs off on the sale of the husband, it's only these 3 properties that her agreement to the sale does not work. Let's just finish off the Indian here. So now the Gemara explains, Lemute Mai. When Rabbi Baravona said this, that it's only these 3 properties, excluding what? When do we say if a wife, signs off on the sale of the husband's properties, or of these properties that the husband is selling, that over there I'll say that it is serious and the sale will be in effect? What is this coming to exclude? If you're going to say, if you're going to say that this means that any other properties that the husband owns, besides these three that we just mentioned that are clearly related to the ksubah or properties that she has a special connection to, and therefore if she signs off on it, it's worthless. So we're going to say, no, any other properties, then if she signs off on the sale of the husband, that her signing off on it is over there, it will be considered serious. So the Gemara says that can't be. Logically, it doesn't make sense. Kol shekain the havile eva. If she's not going to sign off on these sales, definitely it's going to create a fight between the husband and the wife. If there's any other property, even if it's not especially a shibud and especially connected to the ksubah, it's just bichlal. Any property, theoretically, the wife has a right to collect her ksubah from. So any other property, if the husband's trying to sell a property, and the wife is not going to agree, the wife is going to stop her, the husband is going to say, this property you're not agreeing for me to sell, well, why not? It's not especially connected to your ksubah, so why are you not agreeing to the sale? Because you're thinking that one day I'm going to divorce you or I'm going to die, and then you want to make sure that you can collect from this property. So it'll definitely create a fight between the husband and wife. If a wife doesn't want to sign off on a property that's especially connected to the ksubah, okay, so the husband may not get so offended. After all, this is the property that was clearly written into the ksubah. But if it's a property that the husband's trying to sell and the wife is preventing him from doing that, for sure would create a fight. So there's definitely a svara to say that when she agreed, it wasn't serious. She was just doing it not to get into a fight with her husband. The husband will say to her, you're thinking that I'm going to divorce you one day or I'm going to die. So Ella, the pshat over here is, what this is excluding is a property of nichse melug, which is a property that the husband doesn't even own. It's a property that belongs to her. The husband only has a right to eat from the fruits of the property. Such a kind of property, if the husband decides to sell his rights in the property, the husband comes to someone and says, I want to sell you this property, and really the husband only has the rights to the paytas, and he wants his wife to sign off on the property that she should be agreed to sell the goof of the property as well. It's in such a case that if she agrees to sell it, her agreement to sell is considered to be an agreement, because over here, if she's not going to agree to sell, she can't say that I was only doing this because I didn't want to offend my husband. It doesn't even belong to the husband. It belongs to her. It's her property. When a husband tries to sell his property and his wife is making him problems and not signing off on the sale, so then the husband will get offended by this. So then if she agrees, we say that it wasn't serious. She just didn't want to get into a fight with him. But regarding nichse melug property, which belongs to her, and the husband's trying to sell it, why should she agree to this? It's a property that belongs to him. So if she agreed to sell, we consider it to be a serious agreement, that she decided to sell her property. So therefore, going back to our Mishnah, when it says in our Mishnah that ha raya yesh, or we're medayik from our Mishnah, that if a husband brings proof that his wife sold him this property of nichse melug, we consider it to be a valid sale. There was nothing that was forcing her to sell this. There was nothing, she can't say I wasn't serious. No, it's a serious sale, and therefore the sale takes effect.
Why can't you say nachat?